Dear students, in our last class we were discussing the module 4 chapter 1. In that we have discussed what is a class, how to define a class and how to define the objects to access the class. In the present class we will discuss the chapter 2 of module 4, the classes and functions. So in that we are discussing about the time. As we already know what is a class, how to define a class, we are having another example of the class now. Define a class called time that records the time of a day. How we define a time, the class time? Here is an example, the class, the name we have given time. Since we are not writing anything in it, we have to write this pass. This is how we have created the time of type class, right? Now we will discuss how we can assign the attributes of this time. So we can create a new time object and then assign the attributes for hours, minutes and seconds. So here is an example. We have created an object of type time and then we have assigned all these attributes, hours, minutes and seconds with the values. So how this looks like? The state diagram of time objects looks like this. So the time is an object. All these are the attributes is being assigned with the values 11, 59 and 30. So this is about the class of type time, time of type class, and we know how to create an object and also we know how to assign the attributes for this. So in this present session we are very importantly discussing about little more things on the functions, how it relates to the class, how we are going to access those functions. The first point is the pure functions. What is this pure function is? We'll write two versions of a function called add time. In this session we are going to write two different types or two different versions of this add time which calculates the sum of two times. So we are going to write a function of two different versions. It computes the sum of the times which we have inputting. How we are going to do that? Here one rough version is there here. So we are defining a function at time. It receives two times T1 and T2. We are creating another object inside this definition or inside this function. So we are creating another time object. So sum, add the hours of the T1 and T2, store the result in sum, add the minutes of T1 and T2, store the result in minutes, add the seconds of T1 and T2, store it in this and return the sum. Basically we receive two different times, we are creating another object and then for that new object we are storing the addition of these two time objects, whatever the contents we are restoring there and we are returning this new one which we have created. So in this function, whatever the objects it receives, it's not modifying those two objects. We created a new one and all the updated results are in the new one and we are returning this without altering the objects whatever it receives. That's called as a pure function. So we'll discuss little more after discussing the next one and we'll have a comparison between the two. Next is in modifiers. The callers keep a reference to the objects it passes. So any changes the function makes are visible to the caller. Functions that work this way are called modifiers. So in the pure function, whatever it receives will not do any changes for those objects. You are going to create a new and the changes will be in the new and we are returning that result. But in the modifiers, whatever we receive, we are altering those contents that will be reflected in the calling functions. That is called a modifiers. We will discuss example of these two. Okay. The very important thing is when we are passing an object and the changes, whatever the changes in the function are reflecting back on the original object, then the additional care is required when we are designing any problem. So the same thing with respect to the pure function, since we are not altering anything, so no additional care is required. The implementation will be easier and it will be less errors compared to the modifiers. And very important thing, we need to concentrate on whatever the problem, try to implement those problems using a pure functions wherever it is possible. And if you find it is more advantageous by implementing and modifiers only, then we go with the modifiers. So we'll discuss executing the problems on the modifiers. So we have created a class of time, and this example which we have discussed earlier, there we were not having how to print this time. We'll just print it how it works with. So we created a time object, we assigned all the attributes of hours, minutes and seconds, and we are invoking a function to print the time. So here we are printing the hours, minutes and the seconds what we have passed, and we get that. So now we need to concentrate on the pure functions. An example. So because I have not discussed a detailed problem over there, we'll discuss it here. So we define the add time. We need to add these two by using some separate object we are creating, and then that object will be modified with the results of this adding of two different times, and we are returning that result. What are these two times? We are just initializing those two times here, the current time with this values and the bread time. What is the reason here bread time? Just we are trying to make it, what is the time taken to prepare the bread? Okay. We are just calling the function add time by passing these two times, the current time and the bread time. So once we pass it, we are adding it and return the result. So we receive back that result in this done time, and we are printing this by invoking a function print time. Print time has been already written in this. We are invoking the same. Okay. We'll just execute. So this is what the result. What is the time we have given here is hours, 9 hours, 3 hours. So we are getting 12, 14 minutes, 35 minutes. So we get it 49 minutes. So 30 seconds, 0 seconds. So we got 30 seconds. What if our time is exceeding, or the second is exceeding the 60 here? Since we are not taking care of all such things here, so just add up individually. Okay. Suppose if I have 30 seconds here, what we are expecting here is it's supposed to be 50 minutes, not 60 seconds, right? Or I'll just make it 50 minutes. So what we expect? 12 hours, 50 minutes, 20 seconds. But what the result will be getting? 12 hours, 49 minutes, 80 seconds. This is because we are not handling those types of issues in the function what we have written. Pure function is not altering, but it has to handle all the issues. So we can handle those issues if the second is greater than 60. Let it minus 60, add 1 for the minute. If the minute is greater than 60, let it minus that 60 and then add 1 for the hour. So we need to attach this script in the function. So we can just write it here. Yes. So with this, if we execute the same problem, we get a proper result here. Okay. What if this is little more, our program is not able to handle, but here it's working fine. But the thing is, the same script will not be applicable for any sorts of problem. Depends on the problem we can write. So here you can observe the code has been increased a little, but you can able to work to reduce this. That will be discussing bit later or in the next video. Okay. The next, we need to talk on the modifiers. How this modifiers will work. Now we have created a separate object, and then all these changes are in that object. But now what we are doing? We are trying to add seconds for the time whatever it is. So I'll just use the same attribute or the same object which I've created for that current time, and then I'll pass some value for this function, add this time with this seconds and get me back the result. Okay, if I'll not be using the new now, I'll just add the seconds with the seconds whatever it has been passed. So if this seconds is greater than 60, you upgrade this. So first let me use it for some 15 seconds. So the current time is 9 hours 14 minutes 30 seconds. For that we are adding 15 seconds. So what should be the results? 9 hours 14 minutes 45 seconds. That is what we are expecting here, and it has been done with. Now my current time has been changed now to 9 hours 14 minutes 45 seconds. So if I want to work with a different value now, so this value will be added again. If I just do with the same problem, right, the current time will be upgraded with 15 seconds additional. So this is how it works with the actual variable or actual object as being changed with the changes whatever has been done in the function. So the script what we have written, if the time seconds is greater than 60, it will handle. What if I give little more? Multiple times it can't handle, because this if will work only once. So what we can do, instead of an if, we can just alter this to an while. It works fine with, it can able to handle the situation. Okay, we'll just execute it. Yes, this is how we can work with the modifiers. Basically, you need to know modifiers alters the objects whatever it receives, right? We'll switch back to the things. So we need to compare now which the solution what we have written now, right? That is correct, but it is not the most efficient solution. We'll come to know why it is not most efficient. Fine. Which is better out of this, either modifiers or the pure functions? Anything that can be done with modifiers can also be done with pure functions. So that will be more better. So what is the comparison between the modifiers and the pure functions? We'll discuss. Comparison between pure functions and modifiers. Pure function, a function that does not modify any of the object it receives as an argument. Modifiers, a function that changes one or more of the objects it receives as an arguments. So pure functions are faster to develop and less error prone. Modifiers slower to develop since more care required while passing the arguments. Pure functions, most pure functions are fruitful. Modifiers, most pure modifiers are not fruitful. It is fruitless. The reason is we are not returning any value in the modifiers. Instead, that reference what we have passed will be having, so that we'll get that changes whatever done there, right? Almost it's like on pointers which we are passing. That is how it works. So in general, what is recommended? Either we use a pure function or we use a modifiers, which is more better for the good programming. In general, recommended to write pure functions whenever it is reasonable to do so, and resort to modifiers only if there is a compelling advantage. Until and unless you find something more advantageous over pure functions by using a modifiers, we try to implement everything with the pure functions. This approach might be called a functional programming style. The approach wherever it is preferred. So you have to use a majority of the times to use a pure function, and very rarely wherever it is more advantageous use modifiers. That is called as a functional programming style. So here is a brief definition: a style of program design in which the majority of functions are pure. With this topic, I am winding up the session. So we'll continue the remaining topics in our next video. Thank you for learning.